I would like to welcome to the build a famous Titanic historian, Bill Wormstedt. And he came to visit me with his wife Nancy, and I've been trying to get them here for a long time, and I finally did. And I know that he has built a Lego Titanic a long time ago. It was more of a custom build.
Well, I did one when I lived in Seattle, just using standard bricks. It's about this long. Not that accurate,
Right.
But given the scale, the best I could do.
Right.
It did have the enclosed promenade deck up toward the front of A deck, and it was open at the back.
Okay. Well, that's accurate.
As much as I could get.
Yeah.
It had the lifeboats. It had the funnels.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, are you going to get little 1912 Lego people, to put on the poop deck? And maybe I should try to ask them if that's an option.
That could be.
Yeah.
I did see a Lego Titanic, maybe 10 years ago in Seattle at BrickCon.
Oh.
And it was, I think they said 44 feet long.
Oh my gosh.
And there were little Lego people on it.
Oh, I might have seen that. Bill,
I've got some pictures and I could have shown you.
I think I might have seen that on YouTube.
Could be.
So, again, one of the books that I am constantly talking about, you were a part of, and is one of my favorite Titanic books, and I always, mention it when people say, oh, well, if you had to read one book, or, I'm just starting out, what should I read? I always say, On a Sea of Glass. And I still maintain it's just one of the best books ever for Titanic.
Thank you, but I'm not the only author. J. Kent Layton and Tad Fitch, we were all three in there. I think we worked on it about a year before we actually published it.
And George had a part in it too, right?
George was nice enough to write the introduction for us. He did read it before we published and make some comments, but he didn't help write it.
Okay.
But we're also relying a lot off the research of people ahead of us, which is George Behe, Sam Halpern, number of other people that have done great research. We used it as much as we could. If it's provable, then we wanted to use it.
Well, I would just say too, one of the reasons that On a Sea of Glass is one of my personal favorites is something that you and I talked about over dinner, and that is the fact that it very clearly states all of the sources that the research came from.
Right.
And it only uses primary sources.
Well, I wouldn't say only, but to a large extent, we're only using primary sources. One of our frustrations with previous books is they write this great book and you go, oh, wow, why did you say that? And we have no idea where the comment came from. It's just can be really irritating because you're trying to track things back and you couldn't.
Right.
So when we started work on this book, I said, we need to footnote the hell out of this. And we have somewhere over 1,000 footnotes.
Is incredibly accurate and fleshed out and states very unambiguously where everything came from. And you and I have talked about this, but as a person who grew up with a person who was on the Titanic, and has really, from the time I was very little, known about the story, I heard a lot of family lore. And I know what it's like when somebody says something and it's passed down by someone else who told someone else, but they didn't really hear it right. And then that person passed it on. And so what's become something really important to me as I've started to really want to really honor my great grandmother in being very accurate is to do the research. And one of the things that I gravitated to you guys, specifically, I think you were the three that really helped me the most when I was first getting started. You, George, Behe, Don Lynch, and everybody has been so amazingly kind, but you guys are accurate, and you really...
I'm starting to get. I think that's about all we get.
willing to help me, like even do the reenactment of, Mama Aks getting out of the well deck, the aft well deck, and I probably put some of that video in this video so people can see.
She got up. She was in 3rd class, to as high as she could. There was no stairs, and so men helped lift her from deck to deck, holding this baby who weighs 20 pounds, and so she's having to make her way up a 9-foot deck and over a 3-foot rail.
One thing that I think is really special about that particular item of, that you taught me and you proved, was she always said she went up the back of those deck houses together with Philly, with the baby.
Right.
Together. They were always together as they went up this human ladder.
And when you told me that, I went, I don't know if they can do that.
Right. And you said, why? And I said, no, I believe her. She was adamant. She never let go of that baby. And that was just a real aha moment. You actually came to Knoxville for that shoot where we reenacted what it was like to go up the back of those deck houses out of that well deck and climb up there, being helped by these young men. Step on my knee, step on my shoulder, step on my head, pass to the next man, put your foot on the deck, then have to go across the rail. And you said, no, she can't go across the rail holding a baby. Yeah, she did. You said, no, it's not possible. And we kind of had a little thing about that.
Yeah, we did.
And then when you came up and we were doing that shoot, and we used the cheerleading team from my school, my university, sure enough, she got up, they got her up, she put her foot on the deck, and there was no way to get over holding a 20-pound baby. And it probably was more than 20.
Deck, holding this baby who weighs 20 pounds. And so she's having to make her way up a 9-foot deck.
And she was a tiny woman.
Mm-hmm.
So
was that cheerleader the same size?
She was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought so.
Yeah, she was. We got somebody who was 18. She was 18, and she was 5 feet. And my great grandmother was 5 feet, just.
Yeah.
So I mean, when by the time she was older, of course, she was 4 foot something, but she was tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was the first time I had argued with you. And finally I said, okay, Bill, you're right. You got me. There's no way that cheerleader could get over that rail holding that baby.
And keep in mind that cheerleader was probably far more in shape.
Oh, absolutely.
Than Leah was.
And she hadn't just had a baby 10 months before.
True.
And my great-grandmother probably had never exercised in her life.
So if that cheerleader couldn't do it,
there's no way she could
then
do
she
it.
could.
And I think that is really an important thing to consider of how she managed to get in a different lifeboat from my Uncle Phil.
Yeah. And since I've worked with you on this, I've run across a number of accounts by other women who were lifted up those deck houses.
Right.
Just like your great-grandma was.
Right.
I'd say I've run on these like 4 or 5 of them.
I
know I've sent you a couple of them.
Yeah.
And they're all telling pretty much the same story,
Right.
but they didn't have a baby.
Right, exactly. And I think ultimately, I needed to see it. I needed to see it happen, and that experiment really clarified things for me in my mind a lot. And then I honestly believe, as far as the trauma that she suffered after the accident, it was pretty much that moment. I mean, it's horrific what she had to go through, and honestly, she was fighting for her life, really, at 10 to 2 on April 15th on a sinking ship at, in 27-degree weather, no moon. And when she lost sight of the baby, that crushed her mind. That is the thing that really did it, I think. And, I think you and I have done a little research with the help of others, George and Don and others. And there are kind of things to explain how it might have happened, like the baker, Jockin, who was one of the people who was helping the third-class women come up the back of the deckhouses and getting those babies into those lifeboats at the 11th hour, really.
Jockin's testimony says he was up at lifeboat number 10,
right,
and he was throwing babies across the gap.
Right.
He also talks about going down to A deck, which is where we think Leah was.
Right.
And that's where if somebody said, here's a baby, he would have carried her up to 10. Now, when I say I think the baby was in 10, I have no proof.
Right.
That's just my own thing. I've talked about it with several other noted researchers. I couldn't convince them that I was right, but that's okay.
Right.
You can only work with hard evidence.
but there are certain possibilities, and that's one of them.
Certain possibilities, and that's one of them. I've also seen a lot of documentation that talks about this lifeboat had 5 babies in it. Well, who were they? We don't know.
Right, exactly.
We're not going to know.
Sure.
Unless there's something else to do that. I don't think we're going to be able to nail in a lot of these babies unless they were with their parent.
Right.
That's different. But, I think it was Violet Jessup who said, somebody tossed me a baby. And then when she got on the Carpathia, somebody said, that's my baby, and took it away. What baby was it?
Right.
She didn't know.
Well, you can rule out who it wasn't. It wasn't Philip Aks, because that's not the way it went down on the Carpathia, and we know how that happened.
Yeah, right.
So,
but I'm just saying, in general, babies are going to be really hard to nail down, and I don't think they ever will
There was one really sad story, and I remember, this was years and years and years ago, and I was reading, and I read an account where somebody found a baby crying, and they were in the sinking, and it was in a trash can.
I did run across a reference to that not too long ago, I don't think.
Yeah, and that just crushed me, thinking, that I think people just lost their minds. And
well, maybe somebody had to put the baby down for a second and thought, okay, here's a place that'll keep the baby safe, and I'll go away for a minute and then I'll come back.
Right.
Maybe that's what it was. We don't know.
Right.
There were a lot of people running around those decks. Not everybody left accounts. We've discovered quite a number of people that we're not aware of any accounts that they left.
Okay. So we were going to say we're going to give a shout out to Into the Danger Zone. And Bill showed up at the house, and on my coffee table was sitting this book. And
I'm halfway through my copy.
And he had the same book. So, and you have the...
Not yet.
Oh, you don't?
It might be sitting at home waiting for me.
Yeah, shout out to Michael and Tad. This is an excellent book, and we highly recommend this book.
Yes, definitely.
So this should be your next book.